Growing up, my mom was a conservative Christian stay-at-home mom. She was a tradwife. She got married at age 19. She never went to college. And for her, it actually worked out pretty well. Her and my dad have been married for over 50 years. They're still best friends to this day and adorable together. And yet, even under those best of circumstances, I still never really wanted to be like that. I didn't want to be at home. And so it's been really surprising to see this big trend on social media, seemingly of all these women saying, we don't want to work, we want to be at home, we want to be trad wives. And it really shouldn't be a surprise because there's such a huge push among the religious right for women to think this way. And what I think they would have us believe today is the trad wife trend proves that feminism is a failure, that women didn't actually want to be equal with men, that secretly deep down we want to be submissive in the home, scratch cooking for our 19 children and counting. So what's really going on here? Does the tradwife trend prove that women who subscribe to feminism are secretly miserable and are actually wanting their husbands to make all their decisions for them? Or does this trend prove that there's a religious structure desperate to cling to power? Well, in order to find out, we need to crack open the tradwife trend and see what's going on inside. My name's Heidi, and on this channel we deconstruct holy ideas. Let's walk the holy road to cult land. In case you've been living under a rock and don't actually know what the tradwife trend looks like, I want to show you some of the biggest expressions on social media. First, let's look at Ballerina Farm. This is Hannah Nealman. She famously left her life as a Juilliard-trained ballerina to marry the ultra-wealthy Daniel Nealman. She has since had 9 children, most recently of which was just a couple of weeks ago, and spends her days scratch cooking and homeschooling on their farm. And apparently she doesn't even have a nanny. What I find so frustrating about Hannah Nealman is that she seems to want to inspire people to be like her. But the problem is, they're never going to have a life that's anything like hers, because she's so freaking rich. She married a very wealthy person, and then she's built this huge business empire of her own. Women are going to be sorely disappointed when they start following her lifestyle and go out to the farm and start raising all these animals, start having all these kids, but that they don't have the wealth that she has to back it up. That's where the tradwife trap kind of gets really tricky, because women put out these really nice looking images and videos of themselves with this wonderful life and how perfect it is, but they don't show you all the danger that could be lurking around the corner that is so important to recognize as a part of life. This is the point of the main feminist argument, that women shouldn't have a man as their only source of safety and security in life. And that's not just about what if he's abusive or hurts you or leaves you. It's also about what if something horrible happens? What if he passes away unexpectedly? Would you be able to take care of yourself? And if you're truly living out the tradwife lifestyle, not like Hannah Nealman, who's obviously a career woman cosplaying as a stay-at-home wife, but if you're actually doing it for real, you aren't really set up for success. And yet someone like her inspires people to be like her, but they don't have the financial resources to actually be like her. But then there's a totally different class of tradwife content that has nothing to do with luxurious lifestyles or aspirational living or scratch cooking, and has everything to do with conservative Christian women who really want you to know they're not feminists, and they're very satisfied and happy with their submissive tradwife life.
People on this app act like this is the worst thing in the world. Stay-at-home mum. My husband's at work providing for our family. I have some sourdough fermenting on the bench, a baby, an apron, a cute dress. I'm tiddling around the house, cleaning things, making myself food. I can go to the beach if I want. I can go to a cafe if I want. I don't understand why this lifestyle is so controversial. In my opinion, I've been the boss girl. Yes, I do run a business, but I do that on the side.
These women are young, enthusiastic, and they are just dumbfounded by the idea that anyone would want to be a feminist. They specifically tie their tradwife lifestyle to being anti-feminist. If you look long enough, especially on like TikTok, you will see this theme over and over again. It's not enough for them to just say, hey, look at me, I love my life. They have to tie it back to how feminism is broken and there's something very, very wrong with it.
Researchers keep pointing at the same things: exhaustion. Working mothers are reporting significantly higher stress than stay-at-home mothers, higher than working fathers.
This is kind of obvious. It's frustrating to me that the central argument that a lot of these anti-feminist people make is in this vein. Isn't it so sad that women who have kids and they also work, they just have a lot more stress? They're just exhausted. Obviously, I mean, we've come a long way in society, but structurally and socially, we haven't really de-linked the idea that if you have a child and you're a woman, you're expected to raise that child. Whereas if you have a child and you're a man, you're expected to have your wife raise that child in the more practical sense, not in the global sense of like you have nothing to do with your child's life, in the day-to-day work kind of sense. And so, of course, women who have children are more exhausted. It's not a failure of feminism. It's a failure of our system that tells women, sure, you can have the career all you want, but if you want to have a child, you have to do that also. In a better society, in a more progressive society, we would just culturally understand that as soon as a couple decides to have a child, both lives have to sacrifice in order to get that done. And they need to decide between themselves who's going to work, how much, and how they're going to split all the responsibilities, but that it should be equal. In that world, you're not going to see women who are significantly more stressed out than men just because they have a child and work. This is what these anti-feminist tradwife arguments sound like, but what I want to know is, what is it that makes a woman like this? Like these women who are going out of their way to jump on social media to try to unwind feminism, the very same feminism that makes someone actually take them seriously when they give a point instead of looking at them like they're property. So what is it that makes these women the way that they are? The women who are part of the tradwife lifestyle are oftentimes part of the conservative religious structure in America. They're just one of the many faces that represent conservative Christianity and its values. And this entire system, especially in the ways it pertains to things like gender roles or where we get tradwives from, rests on two main holy ideas. One is certainty of their orthodoxy, and the other is shame. Let's talk about how they work together to create women like who we just saw on screen. Certainty is one of the most aggressive tools used by systems like conservative Christianity to keep people in line. You aren't a good Christian if you aren't certain about your beliefs. It's not okay to wonder or question or have doubts. You aren't part of Christianity to go on a personal spiritual journey or to develop yourself in some way, shape, or form. You're part of Christianity because it's the right thing. Therefore, it's not your thing to question. It's not your thing to find fault with. It's your thing to submit to and obey and be part of. So certainty becomes one of the most valuable tools within conservative Christianity or on the religious right in the political sphere. If I'm a woman and I'm in this conservative Christian bubble and I hear an argument coming from a feminist saying, well, hey, just being a tradwife might not be safe for you because if you don't have any skills and you don't have any education and you don't have your own money, what happens if something goes sideways in your marriage? If I bring that to my superiors within my Christian bubble, they're going to say, are you questioning God's design? Are you questioning God's plan for your life? Go read the Bible. Go pray more. Go have more faith. If you aren't certain about what you believe, then what are you even doing here? So as soon as you ask the question just has to go away. And so within these Christian bubbles, the feminist becomes this symbol, this image of what happens when you question. You go out there, you lose the covering of the social insulation you have here, and you're alone, you're isolated, you're childless, you're husbandless, and you're miserable and angry. And that's why they're trying to bring doubt to you, because they want you to be miserable like them. They become the cautionary tale of what will happen to you if you question anything. But even in the most tightly controlled environments, women will still question things when they see someone in their own personal life go through a horrible, messy divorce. They're gonna say, hey, is this really God's perfect design when it could look that bad, when it could look like that, when it could look so harmful for somebody else, what do I actually do? And this is where shame becomes the other tool in the 1-2 punch that keeps women down and keeps them trapped in a space where they are too afraid to question, too afraid to wonder, too afraid to go against what they've been taught. Why did that woman have a husband who hit her, cheated on her, left her? Well, it was her fault. She wasn't submissive enough. She didn't obey him well enough. She wasn't living out God's design perfectly enough, because bad things only happen when you sin, when you fall short, when you're not good enough. That's exactly what shame does. It makes it impossible to see that a system could have a problem because only you're allowed to be the thing that has the problem. When you subscribe to or grew up in a system that has certainty as its main tool for control and shame as a backup, you end up believing that the things you're taught are unquestionable and true and holy and divine. And if I'm having a problem with anything, it's my problem. I need to be quiet about it. I need to make it go away. I need to stop thinking about it. I need to just fix it, because it's shameful to have this problem at all, because it's really just me and I'm not good enough and I'm failing God. And that's what's so insidious about these holy roads that lead out to cult-like environments, which I believe the tradwife trend actually looks like on social media. But regardless of how many women have been manipulated and controlled into this lifestyle and how many choose it freely and are actually living good lives, the bigger question is, what kind of effect is the tradwife trend actually having on our society? Is this something we should be really concerned about? Are women of all kinds actually questioning feminism? Are they actually wanting their husbands to make all their choices for them? Well, it's actually really interesting, because there was recently a study that came out of King's College London that looked into this very question. What is the tradwife trend really about? Some of their findings were pretty surprising, so I'm very excited to show you what I found. So they interviewed about 1,000 women between the ages of 18 and 34 about tradwife content. And they showed the women a list of attributes and asked them whether these attributes were either very appealing, somewhat appealing, neutral, somewhat unappealing, or very unappealing. And here's what they found. So an attribute like the content showing a relaxed, calm, low-stress lifestyle was very appealing to women of all ages in their cohort. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, an attribute like men as the main decision makers was very unappealing to most women across the cohort. But what I found particularly fascinating was when they split the findings between political ideology. Here's what they found that I really didn't see coming. When they split the groups into progressive women versus conservative women, a surprising number of conservative women came back as demonstrating that the ideology behind the tradwife content was not appealing to them at all. For the attribute men as main decision makers, only 18% found that as somewhat or very appealing. The rest were neutral or against that idea. So even among the group of women most likely to adhere to this God's design, defer to men type of stuff, they're largely against it. What the report seemed to find was that women are largely attracted to the tradwife trend because of how hard it is to be a feminist in our modern society. It's more about a momentary escape from the fact that modern culture and our society and our government has failed women, has failed the feminist cause. Because of these conservative forces and these people on the religious right who have stood against legislation and structural reform that would make being a worker and a mother at the same time possible, we get trends like the tradwife. We get a Ballerina Farm. We get looking at these off-grid lives and say, wow, wouldn't that be nice? When in reality, we don't want their life. We definitely don't want their ideology. We want our own life, to not have to be so brutally hard. We want systemic reform so that we can actually pursue having children and a career if we choose to. I'm sure there definitely is a subset of the conservative Christian group of people who actually genuinely believe some of these ideological ideas, but it would seem that even a good portion of them don't believe it either, or don't believe it as wholeheartedly as maybe they perform belief for their friends. I think the tradwife trend, more than anything, is really a signal of the religious system continuing to lose power. The more a system loses its power and the more its members feel backed into a corner, the more likely they are to go on the attack, to start defending their views more vigorously than ever before, to get louder, to get more performative, and I would say that's a pretty good summary of what we see on social media from these tradwives. They're not just happy women quietly living their lives. They don't just happen to stumble into being called a tradwife. They make a very clear display of their virtue and their place and their position and how right they think they are. They perform certainty, and I think they also perform shame. I don't think they necessarily realize they're doing it, but the fact that they're not able to reflect on some of the potential problems with their lifestyle tells me that they're probably taking on a lot of that burden personally onto themselves, or deflecting it out onto other people, which is another way that people handle shame. This doesn't mean the religious right is going away tomorrow. It doesn't mean that this movement is about to die off immediately. But I do believe something like Extinction Burst actually is happening here. I don't know the exact timeline or where we'll see a big shift, but this reporting tells me that ideologically, even among the most conservative people in our society, they don't really buy into these ideas very much anymore. Which means that something like the tradwife trend will probably come and go, and the feminist project will keep going as it has been for decades at this point. And eventually, maybe we'll start seeing our society become a little more like Europe, where feminist ideas are just so baked into culture that it's hard to ever see us going back to anything else. But what do you think? Do you think there's 10 more plans up the sleeve of the religious right? Do you think we have a bunch more years of tradwife type things to endure before we actually get to a little bit of a better world? Do you think that we'll actually see structural reform happen anytime soon? Let us know in the comments. And if you're looking for another video to watch on anti-feminist trends among MAGA and conservative Christianity, I would recommend this video right here, where I break down the link between modesty culture and Mar-a-Lago face. And I'll catch you in the next one.